Hi, family and community. The congregations of the Greater Community Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, in collaboration with the Lee County Black History Society and Faith in Florida, is sponsoring a Souls to the Polls community event on October the 26th from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's right, in an effort to boost voter turnout in our community and in an effort to boost voter turnout to the only remaining precinct in our community, we will be providing free rides to the polls. But not only that, this is a community event where there will be food, there will be entertainment, and there will be activities. So we want to encourage you to meet us at Clemente Park on Saturday, the 26th, from 12 to 6 p.m. for the Souls to the Polls event. Please share this information with your family, your friends, your social circle, and let's have a huge community turnout for this election season. See you there. Well, there you have it. We want to welcome you to Relevant Conversations with Dr. William Glover. And you heard the announcement there. We have a very special conversation scheduled for you today, centering around the Souls to the Polls community event, emphasizing election turnout for all of Lee County, but specifically in the community we've come to love and know as Dunbar, which geographically we know expands beyond Dunbar. And this event is a collaboration between the Greater Community Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, which comprises of 16 congregations throughout the community, and 4 chaplains from Lee Health, and an organization called Faith in Florida. We will be hearing more about them in a moment. And of course, we are also proud to have as a collaborator the Lee County Black History Society. I am your host, Dr. William Glover. I'm currently serving as the president of GSMA, the Ministerial Alliance, and I will be representing GSMA in this conversation. But I have 2 very special guests with me who we're going to be having this dialogue with, and I want them to introduce themselves to you, tell you a little bit about themselves and the organizations that they are representing in this dialogue. So let me yield to the lady on my right, might be your left since you're watching view of the streaming, to introduce herself and tell us about the organization she's representing.
Hello, my name is Janice Cass. I'm a native. I graduated from the segregated Dunbar Junior Senior High School. Also graduated from Florida A&M University, and also from Florida State University College of Law. I'm a retired educator and attorney, and the founder and president emeritus of the Lee County Black History Society and the Williams Academy Black History Museum.
Thank you, Janice. And she is a fellow Seminole, so I'm reminded that we have that in common, and Rattler, fellow Rattler as well. So we have both those institutions in common. So definitely pleased to have you and the wealth of knowledge you bring, your experience and also history of community activism. So we look forward to you weighing in on this discussion. And now let me yield to the gentleman to my left, your right.
Pastor Gregory Ford, overseer, they call me. We had a discussion on that early too, but just to bring you up there, I am the pastor of Cornerstone Church of Fort Myers right here in the Dunbar community, as well as the what we call the Lee County prophetic clergy leader for Faith in Florida. That's my position and stance for today. But I do want to say that I'm excited about this conversation, because the list of activities and things that we're going to be sharing tonight is going to be phenomenal.
Amazing, amazing. And I wanted to take the time to have my guests not only introduce themselves, but speak a little bit about the organizations that they are representing, because this Souls to the Polls community event is a collaboration. You know, one of the narratives that exists in our community is that organizations don't work together. Specifically, we hear it about churches. Churches don't work together. And we're all committed to changing that narrative. Yes. And sitting on this stage really are 19 different organizations institutions working together to put on this event to turn out our community. I've mentioned the Ministerial Alliance and its 16 congregations. We have the Black History Society and their long history of work in the community as a collaborator, and also Faith in Florida. So this is a collaborative event. Organizations and institutions all working together. And I just want to continue to encourage you to correct that narrative when you hear people say that. We have many organizations and institutions not only doing what they do, but are starting to collaborate all the more to have a greater impact and to add value to our community. So with that, I'd like to learn a little bit more about the institutions that are collaborating to put on this Souls to the Polls. Of course, you've all heard me speak at length in past times about the Alliance, Ministerial Alliance, how we came to be, what our numbers are, and some of the events we have put on in our short history to educate, to turn the community out, and also to influence policy that touch our people. We can go back to March where we had the forum with Lee Health. Turned out about 250 people here at Mount Hermon Church, and our influence led to making certain that Lee Health made the legal commitment in their transition documents to remain a safety net hospital so that care can go to those who are uninsured or underinsured, and to Medicaid and Medicare recipients will not be denied care. That is a big thing because that's codified in their documents. It is law that protection is there, and the Alliance was around the table negotiating those terms on behalf of our community. In addition to 2 forms that educated people in regard to this election cycle, one regarding Ward 2 and their candidates, and that was very successful. It was held at Cornerstone Church, packed house, if I recall, and Cornerstone did an amazing job hosting that. And also the second one held here at Mount Hermon for the Lee County Superintendent's position, which is the first time that we are electing our superintendent, and that was a strong turnout here as well. So the Alliance has been involved working on behalf of our community, and we're here again spearheading this Souls to the Polls. Sister Cass, tell us about the Black Historical Society, its founding, what its mission is, and the difference it's making in the life of our community.
First, I want to correct you. We had this discussion. The members of the organization specifically decided to name the organization the Lee County Black History Society as opposed to Historical Society, because we feel that our organization as history should be living and breathing.
Okay.
It's not going to just stop. Like when you think of something historical, it's already happened.
Right.
And what we want to do in this organization is to collect and preserve local Black history. We need to write our own story about the contributions of Black citizens to Lee County in particular, and Fort Myers in general, because we have other communities within the Lee County area, and that was the reason we called it Lee County. We didn't want to limit ourselves to Fort Myers, because historically, Black people in Lee County could only live in 3 areas: Fort Myers, Harlem Heights, or Charleston Park. And those latter 2 places are in the county, which was necessary for us to bring it in. And we also want to, we broaden in our collection, we broaden materials for Southwest Florida, because we are representative in many ways of Southwest Florida.
Well, thank you for that correction and making that distinction. I absolutely want to get the name of the organization correct and in line with why you made the changes. So it is the Lee County Black History Society. And I like what you said, that historical refers to something that's past, documented. History refers to something that is living, that is alive.
Ongoing.
And is ongoing.
Happens
And
every second of every day.
we know how important it is to record your own history and to tell your own history, because one of the things we're going to talk about that we see happening is the retelling of certain parts of our history that really are not accurate to historical facts. So, can you speak to anything that's going on with the Black History Society that's happening current that you would want to create some awareness about?
One of the main projects that we have now is to raise funds so that we can develop and build a community cultural center, which would expand what we wanted to start with. Part of our desire was to have a museum, collect memorabilia about local people, make it relevant. Most people, when they hear the word history, oh, that's boring and so dull, and but we want to make it alive and make it relevant to local people so they can look and see what individuals within this community did to make a way out of no way when we were all living under Jim Crow. And it was necessary for us to be inventive, creative, and community minded.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And I've attended a couple presentations in regards to that cultural center. And I really want to encourage people, businesses, entrepreneurial leaders, organizations, institutions in the community to get in touch with the Black History Society and find out more about this planned cultural center. I understand a certain amount of funds have already been raised, but to get a release, there needs to be matching funds raised.
Need a lot more, millions more.
Millions more?
Millions more. And it's going to be a great facility because it's not only going to house, let's say, for example, be an archives of local people histories, your family members, people who were community leaders, but it's also going to be an opportunity for the display of cultural contributions that Black people within our community and in the past have created so that we can have exhibits and artistic exhibits, including cultural plays, speeches, soliloquies, musical renditions, those kind of things to bring a sense of community, to bring our culture, because we don't have that right now. We don't have a place to express that right now. And right now, Dunbar is in need of an identity, in need of preserving its identity. And the Black History Society wants to be an integral part of that.
Amen. Thank you for sharing that. And it's important that we create awareness about that. As I said, I've attended a couple of those meetings. I've seen the plans. It's projected to be a beautiful facility, but we have to own this as a community. So hopefully we can get some traction, draw some more people in to help drive that, to make it become a reality. It's something that we all would be very proud of. Overseer Ford, tell us about your role and work in Faith in Florida, and why Faith in Florida is connecting with the Ministerial Alliance to help advance our work.
Well, first of all, I got involved with Faith in Florida maybe during our hurricane time when we had the Ian deal, and they came over to our county to check with our people and see how we're doing. That's the kind of love they have with Faith in Florida and the organization. And matter of fact, the executive director, Dr. Rhonda Thomas, and her staff, all of them came over, even from Miami Gardens, to come and check on, us here in Lee County who have been affected by the hurricane. And so they continue to reach out to me, and we continue to conversate, and they just start introducing to me a little bit about what Faith in Florida was all about. Of course, Faith in Florida deals with the legislation, deals with, what's going on in the Senate as well as in the House of Representatives. These kind of things we gotta go up and get with these people that's voting and passing these laws. And so that was a time to learn how the system and policies kind of work out. And then they invited me to go with them on this trip. So I went and learned a lot because I was finding out little things you don't really know. We sit in a place, but the people that's really making the decisions on how we live and the laws and everything, man, they're a long way from us. They really don't know the heartbeat of our community just like we do, us clergymen. So I said, well, I'm going to invest in this a little bit more, and I got involved. And they started talking about Black history as well, how important it is that they're trying to take Black history out of the schools, take them out of the schools, but we have to teach Black history in our communities. And so Excuse me, because I got
Want to take a moment to get a sip of water? And I'll just continue part of that dialogue with also mentioning that Overseer Ford is the chairperson of the Education Committee with the Alliance, and part of the assignment of that committee is to lead the way in the Alliance, been involved in greater voter registration, greater voter turnout, and specifically with the aim of putting together a Souls to the Polls event for this year. And if I could have you segue back directly to that tie with Faith in Florida, and then we'll proceed with our discussions.
Well, one thing that Faith in Florida does is promote the Souls to the Poll events, voting, registration, not only that, getting our younger voters out, getting them listed, getting them involved. So this is one of the things that we encourage, not our leaders and our, they call them prophetic clergy leaders who sit over different counties and regions, in which Faith in Florida is just about in every major county in the state of Florida. But what we have done is trying to make sure that voter registration, and getting people out to vote who never vote. Just working on turnout.
Yes.
And that's one of the big things here with this election, is that we're really stepping it up a little bit on how we get voter turnout.
Yes.
Because the Souls to the Poll event is really about voter turnout. Getting people not only just to talk about the election and talking about who the president is and these certain ones, but also participating. Their vote matters.
But vote.
But vote, yes, that's what I'm going to say. We just not want conversation. We not love conversation, but we need participation.
And that is a perfect segue into our discussion on the historical setting of Souls to the Polls and why we're doing it, why we're inviting the community out to participate in it, and why it's still important and relevant. And Pastor Ford used some language in regards to Faith in Florida and his assignment in that organization as the prophetic clergy leader for Lee County. And this language, as it pertains to political activity, prophetic, is really rooted in the Bible tradition, because God always sent a prophetic voice to speak to the politicians in the Bible, to the kings, to the rulers, to the noblemen. He sent the prophets to speak truth to power. He sent Moses not to Hebrews first. Go read your Bibles. He told Moses to go to the Pharaoh. Go to the one who has the power to affect change and speak truth to that power. So that language is tied to that biblical tradition. And I want to make that distinction because over the years, as we've gotten involved in local policy issues through the Life organization, people have pointed the finger and said, well, Dr. Glover, you're getting political. And I would always come back and say, no, I'm being prophetic. Because if you read scriptures, the prophets in the Bible addressed social policy issues like labor, like oppression, like injustices, like fair wages, like just governance. So that's what true prophetic ministry is, carrying over into the ministry of Jesus when he said, I've not come to destroy the law and the prophets, but to fulfill. We've just gotten caught up in the church, laying hands on people, speaking over their future, giving them a personal word, and that's the end of prophetic ministry.
And I add that's one of the things that really drove me to get deeper involved in Faith in Florida. Because a lot of times we know the word, we do our very best to stick with it, and some people try to make you feel bad about mixing it, doing a little bit of both. You see, you're one or the other. I said, no. We can't. We live in this world, and our people are being governed by these laws. They affect our education levels. They affect our jobs. They affect how we live, how we communicate. And then now all of a sudden you're saying we can't talk about that in the pulpit. Jesus himself, when he came, walked the earth, he dealt with these things.
Absolutely. And of course, we're both clergy. And we don't want to start sermonizing.
Right. Yeah.
No, I'm saying to refrain myself as well, okay?
Well, I'm
but
not
you're
clergy.
absolutely right.
I'm not clergy, but as a black person and as a child of Jim Crow and a student of history, I know that black people needed faith in God when Hope unborn had died. And we needed some place to look to hope on because we didn't have much down here.
Well, you're absolutely right, and there's so much rooted in our history when we start talking about this prophetic voice, and even black preachers from slavery to Jim Crow to even now, their understanding of God is that He was an advocate for the oppressed, and there was this call for justice in the message of the black church. This prophetic call to get back to that language. So that very much is part of our history. That's what the civil rights movement was born out of. That's why clergy, primarily African-American clergy, led that movement. It's just the last 40, 50, 60 years with the rise of the prosperity gospel and what we now come to understand as contemporary conservative evangelicalism, we've seemed to have forgotten that past that's rooted in our faith. That is a call for justice for our people. So this is great dialogue. This is what we wanted. But let's segue into having some discussions on some of these issues that are on the ballot. Okay, and some of these are tough issues, and we're all here because we're informed, and we either have formulated or are formulating our thoughts on these matters. But I wanted to have these discussions because we typically don't have forums in our communities, and especially in the church, where we discuss these things, where we are allowed to have dissenting views and perspectives, but the aim is to understand and to educate. The church tends to think in right or wrong when it comes to these very serious, complicated social issues. And sometimes things aren't as black and white, and you have to be principled in what guides you. And so we want to talk through some of these issues that are on the ballot. And in a general sense, we know that this 2024 election cycle is vitally important. And we want to get at some of the issues that are on the ballot. But let me pause before we specifically deal with an issue and give each you an opportunity to kind of share your burden for why this issue is why this election cycle is so pressing for you as an individual and what your concerns are. And Sister Cass, let me start with you. Why is this 2024 election cycle so important and so pressing for you?
Actually, elections have always been important to me, and this one is particularly so. And I have to say, as a child of Jim Crow, growing up in a segregated society, listening to television when black people were still being called all kind of awful names and treated with disrespect, and knowing that the adults that were around me were whispering and talking about things, because even then when I was growing up, it wasn't so safe to express how you were feeling because you lived in a society that was dominated by someone else, and you had little to no say in what was going on. So it became really important for me as a person to have some say then. I knew that black people thought it was relevant. I chose a political party because we learn that primaries is when candidates get elected a lot of the times. And if you're in Florida and you're not in a party, then you're not going to have much say. And that's significant. We today we have an opportunity to decide which direction America goes in. When I was growing up, there was hope about getting to a location, and we got to that location. We got a black president. We got a black woman running for president again, but now somebody's threatening to take all that away from us. So it's extremely important that people realize that this is a battle. This is, it's not just an election. It's a choice between whether or not you want to be in a society that's oppressive, where you feel that you can't go places, where there's signs and you're living in an apartheid kind of environment, or whether you do want to be free. And with the way that the parties, the I should say the players or the different factions in this election are concerned, it's not just going to be black people that are going to be enslaved. We're going to be living in a different kind of world, and it's not going to be America anymore.
So there's deep concern with that. Overseer Ford, how would you answer the question that we hear from a lot of people who haven't decided how they're going to vote or whether they're going to vote, and some have given up on it altogether, concluding that it doesn't make a difference? What would you say to people who are indifferent, apathetic, or have decided not to participate in terms of the urgency to engage?
Well, first of all, they got to register in their mind and their spirit. However, that this is a very pivot moment for us. I mean, everything could change. When we're talking about the next 10 years to 20 years of our life, being almost enslaved, I just felt that at one time the Lord, I was just walking and talking with other pastors and some leaders, and I was just sitting there, we were sitting there sharing, and I said, if the Lord would allow, something happen that the leadership pool would be in the wrong place, wrong type of person, wrong individual, it's going to be like he put us in slavery again. I mean, just put us back in Egypt, where we were under taskmasters who were just leading us in a kind of way because we wasn't using our voice. We wasn't using our power because we stood back, did nothing. We can't afford to be on the sofa now. We cannot afford to be in the booth, get involved, and make our voice known so that we don't put ourselves in a place where we're gonna really be begging and choosing and trying to get things done that we could have changed if we just would have voted. Voting is important right now. Your voice is important. Your vote is important. You must get out and you must say something. That's why we just can't just let things be, and we can't just be afraid to get out there and let our voice be heard. And for as our vote counting, it has to be on record. And it's important that we do it in numbers.
Absolutely.
We got to do it in numbers. And we got to do it to the point that where people don't know that the black vote is important.
Absolutely.
Our community is important. We stand for what is right, and we're going to fight for what is right, and we're going to vote for what is right.
There you go.
And that's what we need now more than ever, is to promote that and get our young men, our millennials, come on, who is eligible for the vote, the Generation X, all those that are eligible to vote, get them out, because right now, a lot of them are not crying because they don't see what they want to see. But if they don't move now and get involved now, you're never going to see what you want to see, because the current leadership that's trying to take position and get in place is not going to let that happen.
Well, let me give some very tangible reasons, in addition to the appeal both of you have made, why elections matter. The first has to do with when President Obama was in office, and the party and his ability to push the Affordable Care Act through. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, people with pre-existing conditions would not be insured. Insurance companies could just flat out deny them insurance, depending on what that precondition was. Secondly, it was many times the insurance and the coverage you could get was not affordable for millions and millions and millions of Americans, so they went uninsured. Something very, very tangible. There are currently 15 million Americans insured under the Affordable Care Act, including myself and my family, who otherwise would not have had insurance if that vision was not there and if the party didn't have the power to push it through at that time. That is a tangible thing that impacts our lives. A second example would be the pandemic and how it was managed. We had administration or mismanaged. We had administration didn't believe in the science behind pandemics, was in denial about the pandemic, was giving advice and directions counterintuitive to the medical professionals and the science community. And as a result, 100 million Americans died needlessly. There's not one person listen to me who don't have someone they know, someone whom they know knows someone who died during that pandemic senselessly because it was being mismanaged. So those things matter. Compared to our neighbors in the North Canada, we suffered more than 1 million deaths. They had less than 400,000 deaths. Just how it was managed. And then third, more locally, we had an initiative here some months ago, the Life Organization trying to move the city to build affordable housing on their News Press site. We got the Affordable Housing Trust Fund set up. We ended up finding a builder who won the contract to build affordable housing. And this is a matter of public record, but the mayor, city manager didn't want that on that property. They wanted high rise to bring more taxes in, and they found a way to kill it and rescind it from that builder, and now high rises are going up. And that's a loss of 200 plus units of affordable housing in the center of Fort Myers. So politicians matter. Public policy matter. They impact our lives. And when you remain silent and don't engage, then you get what comes to you, because this is an opportunity to weigh in. So there are a lot of reasons to get engaged. So thank you for that. But let's talk about some of these issues. I want to begin with this idea of voting values versus voting interests. Because many people in the community of faith, we hear all of the advertisement through conservative religious media about voting your values, voting your values, voting your values. But we know, we are astute enough to know that politics is about voting your interests. So let's sift that conversation out a little bit. So Sister Cass, let me come back to you to be a lead in making this distinction between values and interests, and which direction we should go in determining how we vote.
I'm, of course, going to be leaning towards voting your interests, because your interests have to do with the things that directly impact your life or the life of your community, whereas your values may hinge upon, generally, most people are looking at their political values. I won't vote for this person because they're so-and-so, or I don't believe this thing, so I'm not going to try to help anybody else that doesn't believe what I believe. And because of that, you'll vote against your own personal interests in order to achieve your values. And your values generally might just be philosophy.
Okay, all right, and I think that's a good distinction and reason towards interest. Pastor Ford, you want to weigh in on that?
I like to say that the interests of our people, we be in the community, we're around people, and we know where they're hurting, we know where they're suffering, we know what they're dealing with, we know what the conflicts are. Just 3 areas stand out real quickly. You know, affordable housing, affordable child care, and just affordable, you talked about health insurance. I mean, these are the areas that a lot of the people, they don't have these, they can't function in the world like everyone else, because these are major issues, especially in Southwest Florida. Affordable housing, come on. You might have to move to another city, another town, in order to find somewhere affordable to live.
Actually, you can't do that in Florida pretty much, because the governor of Florida signed a law recently making it illegal for counties to pass rent control laws, which means that people who own property can jack up the rent as much as they want to. So you're not going to be safe in any part of Florida.
Yes, and that's a good thing, because but the only way we're going to change that is by our voting, putting the right people in office.
And more specific to the conversation, voting your interests as opposed to values.
Right.
And my contribution to this discussion is people understanding first that there is a difference in values and interests, and also that people who share your values per se as Christians may not necessarily share your interests, because you live in different communities, you have different social economic levels, and you have different needs. And at the end of the day, regardless of what values are being purported, people vote their interests. Case in point, there was a time when someone of the character, the nature, the caliber of the former president would never have been the nominee of the Family Values Party just because of his checkered past. But it was an opportunity to support someone they thought would win and be in power. And I personally believe they compromise their family values for power. And that is an example of, at the end of the day, everybody votes their interests, and that is what politics is about. So if housing is important to you, vote for candidates who support affordable housing. If health insurance is important to you, vote for candidates who support affordable health insurance, and so on. We could go down the list. Vote your interests and don't be seduced by the values argument, because at the end of the day, everybody's voting interests, and that's what politics is about. That's how people align themselves around interests. Okay? So thanks for weighing in on that. Something else that we hear a lot about in the news, and that is, that democracy is on the ballot. And we hear other terms being thrown out, like we're gravitating towards an autocracy, or we're gravitating towards even a dictatorship. So I would like to discuss this, because I personally do believe that this election will determine what our democracy is going to look like going forward, whether it's going to be an opportunity to steer the ship and correct the direction and strengthen it, or we'll continue to move in a direction to where democracy in America as we have known it will cease to be, and will begin to resemble countries that have dictatorships and have autocracies like Russia and China and North Korea. So Overseer Ford, let's start with you and weighing in on that topic.
Well, one thing I don't like is that one of our candidates, he is definitely friends to dictators, just following in background, and he's always taking vacations to visit them and do certain things with them, and that's not good for me. I think, birds of a feather flock together, and so I think what we need to do is to make sure that we stand up for what we've always stood up as a country, for democracy and equal values, and making sure people are treated fair. I'm afraid that if we go the other way with, and I know that's a strong word, dictatorship, but that's exactly what, one of our candidates really is focusing on and going after, is just being a power position. He just wants to, without having to have the reserve. You notice, we know when the abortion issue was coming up in the Senate, I think it was last year, just one phone call from him changed all the votes. And I mean, what does that mean to you? He's not even in office. Yeah, that's nervous to me. That's a threat to society. If some guy can make a phone call, got that much persuasion that he can dictate how votes are going to be going, and that's what he wants. He wants that position, and we can't afford to let that happen. I'm telling you, we're going to be in a place of, it's going to be really tough for life as we know it now, if we don't have a country that's really striving and standing strong on democracy.
And Sister Case, do you care to weigh in and share your Cass? I'm sorry, excuse me, thank you. Sister Cass, do you care to weigh in on this discussion, democracy being under threat versus autocracy, dictatorship?
I was thinking about the 60s when Pastor Ford was making his last statement, because in the 60s, radical young people, usually Black Power Force movement people, used to always say that, and I'm quoting them, that Black people were, they were reactive instead of proactive, that we wait until something happens to us before we do something about that. And right now, America has to be proactive. We can't wait, because once something changes, it's hard to get it back the way it should be. Earlier, someone mentioned about how Black history is being taught, how laws have been passed in Florida that limit the teaching of Black history. Actually, 44 states in this country, there's 50 states in this country, 44 states in this country have passed laws. States generally with Republican governors and predominantly Republican legislatures are passing these laws saying that we aren't going to teach the truth in America. How is that a democracy when every person, every group is not represented properly so that we can know the truth about ourselves? That's saying that one group is more important than the other group. And that is a threat in and of itself. If we sit back, we don't want to experience that again.
or rewriting history to appease the sensibilities
Mm-hmm.
of a particular group for whom it's uncomfortable to tell. And I've always been taught, the whole narrative around slavery. The governor, and it's been reported, people have made statements about, slavery wasn't that bad, and families, were stronger, and
And
somehow
they develop skills
develop skills that serve the community, glorifying the institution of slavery so that it didn't look or reflect so bad on the slave owner. And the cruel truth of it is the shame of slavery isn't on the slave. The shame of slavery is on the slave owner. And that history needs to be told as it happened, because America really never have come to grips with its original sin, which is slavery. And it's referred to as America's original sin because when the colonists decided to rebel and declare independence from England, they needed to raise funds for the war, and they needed allies to support their effort against England. And some of the allies said that they would only support the war effort if all of the colonies joined the rebellion. And there were 13 colonies. And when they went through talking about all the colonies decided to join, and many people don't know this, with the exception of South Carolina and Georgia. And South Carolina and Georgia said, we will not join if we are not going to have slavery as a part of this new nation. Because Thomas Jefferson purported that slavery would not be allowed, even though he owned slaves. And they rejected that.
Scratched it out of the country.
And to get the funding for the war effort, they kept slavery as a part of the birth of this nation. So that's putting profit over people way back then. That is historical fact. So the retelling we have to have a concern about, and that it's sifting down to the local level. So that's important while we have to fight to preserve democracy and truth, hard truth even. I want to make this distinction on this discussion, democracy, autocracy, dictatorship, because I think we hear these terms and people oftentimes don't really know their meaning. First, dictatorship is when power is consolidated in one individual and there is no separation of powers. Everything goes through that individual, and the state exists to satisfy the wishes of that individual. And, of course, Mr. Trump is on record as indicating he wouldn't mind being dictator for a day. To which I would say, if you wouldn't mind being dictator for a day, you wouldn't mind being dictator for life if you could make it happen. So that's a very dangerous thing for an American president to say. Secondly, an autocracy is where power is consolidated in a very small group of power. We're more closely drifting towards autocracy than dictatorship at this point because the way the laws are being written and the really 7 states controlling the election at this point, battleground states, and how the electoral college works, whoever controls those 7 states will win the election, basically. And that's getting power consolidated to a very small number of people. So that's a concern. And then, of course, democracy is representative. Allegiance is to the Constitution. There's a separation of powers. People are held to the rule of law. And that's what we've had. That's what we want. It's never been perfect. But even back to the Civil Rights Movement, we never tried to destroy American democracy. Dr. King's challenge was for American democracy to live up to the values and the truths of its Constitution and founding document. We never wanted to destroy it. We wanted to improve it. And I think that's a big difference in what's happening now in the movements that we see out there at work. You motioned a couple of times. I didn't know if you want to weigh in on that dialogue.
I was just thinking that people of color have always bought into democracy. They have bought in the vision of what America should be, which is why we were able to fight ourselves out of slavery and out of Jim Crow and still try to strive towards the ideals that are part of the United States Constitution and what America is supposed to be all about, not fighting and hurting other people and because we are in a position to cause some pain, instead of doing that, we're not treating people like they expect they would treat us if they were in our positions.
And that is always the fear of the oppressor, that if the oppressed ever were free, that there would be retribution. And of course, that has not been the American experience by and large with African Americans as we've gained freedoms and liberties. And you've said something very important. You know, there's a provision in the First Amendment that says that we have, as citizens, a right to redress or address government peacefully on issues that are important to us. It's a paraphrase of it, which basically means that any issue you don't agree with, you can voice it, and you can seek resolution to it, as long as you work through the levers and the channels of government to do it. And by and large, our people historically have gone through the levers of government to fight for the change that we want. Comparative to the history of slavery, the number of revolts are relatively, slave results resulting in violence, are relatively low compared to the history of slavery. So to your point, we've always tried to work through the levers. We've never stormed the Capitol. We've never tried to prevent the certification of an election. And I think that's a distinction between that type of protest and the protests our people have been engaged in historically. It was never to destroy democracy, but to improve it and to work through the channels of government to address our concerns. But I think that's a very astute observation on that. Let's move forward to just a couple more issues, and then we'll tend and see what types of questions we have coming in from our audience to address. And this is a difficult one, and personally, let me say that I am still working through my positioning morally on this issue. I just know that at the end of the day, where the pendulum is now does not have a sense of being in the right place pertaining to the issue and the impact it's having on people's lives. And that is the whole argument around reproduction rights. In the past, it's been framed as pro-life, pro-choice issues. I have questions, about, how pro-life really is. And I have questions about pro-choice in terms of is that choice carte blanche? And I'll talk about it in a minute. I settle on what I call sanctity of life as a guiding principle in deciding these things. But let's talk about this reproduction rights issue and where we are with the banning of Roe v. Wade and the fallout and all the implications to that part. Let's just start there, because when Roe v. Wade was overturned and there were no restrictions on states in banning abortions, states with a vengeance, particularly states with conservative governors, have been full speed ahead at abandoning abortion carte blanche, to the point of criminalizing any physician assisting with an abortion, regardless of the emergency of a situation concerning a woman's health, and also criminalizing abortion itself, regardless of the circumstances and how it impacts a woman's health. Let's just kind of weigh on where we are, and then we kind of talk about maybe where we should be on that issue. And being the only female on the panel, Sister Cass, let me allow you to weigh in on that and provide some perspective.
I'll do my best. And it is a strong issue with young women, with older women who have daughters and granddaughters and great-granddaughters. And what I'm finding surprising and comforting is that a lot of men are getting involved because they're concerned about their women's choices and someone else, the government, insinuating themselves into your personal life about how you want to live. It's an issue that's not just restricted to pro-life, because it's not just about, I think some people, when they talk about pro-life, they're thinking in terms of abortion, it just exists to terminate a life, an infant's life. But it's more to it than that. And the move that is on now in terms of attacking reproductive rights for women is that they not only want to restrict when a woman can have an abortion, but they want to also control whether or not a woman can plan when she wants to have children or how many children she wants to have. Historically, women have been forced to have multiple children because they had no choices. And as a woman, I could not imagine how hard that would have been on a woman's physical condition, and then her trying to take care of all those kids and be a parent to those kids. I'm certain she didn't get any help. She didn't have any say. Thinking in terms of that, they want to not only prevent abortion, control birth control, eliminate birth control, eliminate Planned Parenthood. What's going to be next? They're going to want to tell people who can have children. That's going to have to follow. And that's when it becomes scary, because there has been a history in this country where people have been sterilized.
Absolutely.
And then
That's
against
documented.
their wills.
That's documented.
Then the
absolutely.
question becomes, what people are going to be sterilized?
And-
They're going to be poor people? Going to be poor people and people of color? It's not probably going to be rich people, right?
Well, and you raised that it is not a hypothetical. There have been cases in the history of this country where those types of experiments have been done, unbeknown to those who have been subject to it. So I think that's a real concern. You raise a distinction in your remarks that I think is important that I picked up on, and that is that distinction between abortion, which carries the idea of randomly aborting a fetus, and reproductive rights. And I would add a layer, the health and the life of the woman to this. Because from a reproductive perspective, with the ban lifted, what we see are states restricting access to some type of fertile treatment to help people have children, banning those drugs as
Right.
well. Is a part of this, which is a step, too far. And also the distinction when there is at risk the health of the mother as opposed to the viability of the fetus, where doctors are not able to intervene even when the mother's health is at risk, because it would be considered an abortion and they could face a penalty for aborting. And we're starting to see the fallout of this extreme reaction and how they're, of this ban. So it raises the question. I'll come to you, Overseer Ford, for the moral side of this discussion. This is kind of where you and I have to work through our positioning and help our people with this, because historically it has been viewed as black-white, pro-choice, pro-life. Pro-life is biblical, it's where God is. Pro-choice is not biblical, it's where the devil is. And Christians, carte blanche, should be pro-choice. And many of our people struggle with that still, because it's been ingrained in us that if you're a Christian, you need to be on the side of life. Let me allow you to weigh in on that, and then I'll share the thoughts that I've worked through thus far on that to help our people navigate that moral maze.
Well, let me say, a lot of especially the things that we're talking about primarily now, we really didn't have a whole lot of classes on this stuff. Nobody teach us how to deal with things that we have to deal with on a daily basis now. We got a lot of things going on, especially with the abortion issue. How do we measure that up against the incest and rape?
That's another component.
Yeah, I mean, this girl was abused by a family member.
Exactly.
And, I mean, what do? We had to sit there and just say...
Victimize her a second
Make
time?
a child,
Yeah.
make a child, have a child.
Yeah,
for
we got to be
relatives.
Christians. We just got to go through it, and we just got to live it out. I said, no, it's got to be a better way. It's got to be something done that be some type of peace, some kind of way of selling this without making it something that God ordained. God gave us choice, okay? God gave us choice. All of us had choice if we were going to sin or not. You know, if we were going to cuss or fuss. Okay, all these things were matter of choice. What you choose, choices come with consequences. You know, but the thing is that we have to pray about everything now because everything's different. Every situation is unique within itself. So if we're just going to put it up on just one thing, okay, pro-choice, whatever, every situation is not going to lead to that.
Which, if I may.
Yeah, please.
you want the heat off of you.
No. What I'm saying is, you know, I'm not going to say I'm the expert right here because I am not. I'm a long way from here.
Sure.
I mean, this is not an area where I can jump in and talk a lot about it, and I got a lot of history on. No, I might have had 2 or 3 of these cases come up in my lifetime as a pastor.
Right.
But at the same time, I've seen what happens in a community when there's a lot of these activities happen, and how it damages families. They handle it wrong.
In fact, so let's just to the point that believers, particularly people and families who are impacted by this issue can never be framed black-white. It can never be framed exclusively right, exclusively wrong. Just think about the complexity of the issues that we've raised here. Incest, rape, underage child. Is it just, is it right to force an underage child to bear a child which she was violated in conceiving? What does that do to her life? Where's the support system there for that? That's not an easy moral issue. Secondly, where there is a life or death issue between the life of the fetus and the life of a mother, whose life do you choose? So it can't be black and white. There has to be guiding principles. So for that reason alone, an all-out ban on abortion, we see the complications that are arising from that. That certainly does not clear to be the right moral just decision, an outright ban. And the only way to honor the rights of the mother, her family, physician, and how their faith impact the decisions they make is to leave the decision to the mother, the family, and however their faith dictates them on what they should do. Legally, I personally believe that that behavior should not be legalized, should be illegalized for that reason, because we are taking choice away. And in doing so, we're inflicting more violence, oftentimes, on a situation where violence has been inflicted, and we are preferring the life of a fetus over the life of an sentient being who is here. And so, to your point, don't have it all worked through, but where we are now and the fallout we're seeing certainly doesn't have the feel of being the right moral, ethical choice. But it certainly is not a black or white choice. And so towards that, we simply would say, again, vote your interest on that, because the values argument will have you voting against your interests. And as Overseer Ford has stated, for those of a faith, God has given us choice. We are free moral beings, and if we make a decision that offends him, we have to stand before him, and we have to reconcile that, right? And so the government does not need to get in our bedroom and the decisions pertaining to our reproductive rights, especially when they purport to be small government. You can't reach any farther than that to get into people's bedrooms. All right, well, thank you all for weighing in on that difficult issue. Our time is going to be wrapping up here in a moment. There's at least one other topic I'd like to have some discussion about, and that is this whole immigration issue and how it has impacted communities of color. It's really, really interesting how a fight over the border and, and immigrants crossing the border spills over into a dialogue of Haitian immigrants being accused of eating cats and dogs. And so it just shows that even on an issue that isn't really primarily our issue, our people gets thrown in and demonized as a part of that issue to make it a wedge issue. So let's just have some conversation about that.
I think it's an effort to pit us against each other, different black people against other black people, and because we are all so vulnerable and it's so easy to point the finger at a group that a lot of people say, oh, well, nobody really cares about them. When you think about that candidate who made that statement, and we have a senator from the state of Florida, which hosts the most Haitian people in the country are in the state of Florida. And do you think our Senate representative, the Republican Rick Scott, you think he said something about, no, these are hardworking, good people who have come to our country because they needed to, because of violent situations in their country wasn't safe and the economy is in bad shape? It's easy to target people who don't have others to support them. And a large problem that we have, and I hope that we begin to address more, and that's part of that community issue that I'm concerned about, is that there are different kinds of black people, and they live in Lee County, and we need to be inclusive of them and let them know that we care about our Jamaican relatives and our Dominican relatives and our Puerto Rican relatives and our Haitian relatives as well, black as well as brown. We are all children of God, and we are all children of America who want to have equal opportunities. Yes, we get a little concerned about seeing what's happening on the borders, but there was an opportunity to correct that. But this candidate is running. He didn't want to solve the problem. He wanted the problem to be something he could bring up when he was running for office.
Because it's a great wedge issue. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think maybe both parties are guilty of this. There's certain issues they want to keep in play because they know they can divide people, motivate people, feed to the worst nature in people regarding those issues. And certainly this is one that is kept in play because it keeps people divided. I love what you said in terms of the diversity of black people in our communities and in this nation, not to mention the diversity amongst our Central America, Latino, Hispanic community. An attack on one community is an attack on all. And here's the irony. We're all immigrants with the exception of the Native American Indians. This is not an original homeland of anyone except the Native American Indians. So we are indeed a country of immigrants, whether one views themselves as an immigrant or not, and we just need to have more humanity and in our leaders seeking to bring communities together as opposed to demonizing them and driving them apart. So with that, I'm going to segue. And at this time, we'll start treating some of the questions we have received from our audience. We want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you for submitting your questions. And we will treat as many of them as we possibly can. Our moderator has been writing some. Let me see if I can read his script. Otherwise, I have to pick up my phone and go through the feed. Thank you so very much. Okay. So here's one that goes back to the question that we were dealing with concerning interests. What happens if your interest goes against biblical values? And I just did a series on this with that exact title, How Shall We Then Vote, Interest versus Values? So to the person who wrote this or anybody else who's interested in a 2-hour discussion on this issue, I want to direct you to our website, www.mthermanchurch.org, and we have that sermon listed in both parts. How shall we vote, interest versus values? And it addresses this question. And to answer it succinctly, as a Christian, we can determine how we should vote by looking at the people Jesus advocated for in his ministry and the solutions he recommended to their problems. And I'll direct you to Matthew chapter 25, where Jesus said, when I was hungry, you fed me not, and thirsty, you gave me no drink. So he's getting at the issue of scarcity and access to clean drinking water. And to the asset of food scarcity, he said, feed. To the access of clean drinking water, he said, provide the clean drinking water. He said, when I was a foreigner, translated immigrant, you made room for me. So he's speaking about immigration. He doesn't demonize immigrants. He says, make room. In fact, when you read your Bibles, the word foreigner is used throughout, and each time it is used, it's in reference to an immigrant, someone who was not native of Israel, who wasn't an Israelite by covenant, but lived in Israel. In fact, there's a passage in the Bible where God gives a passage of citizenship to non-Hebrews. If they agreed to keep the covenant, if they agreed to follow the law, if they agreed to keep the Sabbath, he said, receive them as if they were born in this land. So even God allowed for a pathway to citizenship, right? So our values are reflected in the Bible when we look at the people Jesus advocated for and the solutions he recommended. And the questions we have to ask: are politicians proposing solutions that Jesus proposed? Are the politicians proposing making certain that people have access to affordable food? They have access to clean drinking water as opposed to water that's laden with lead. You follow? Are they proposing policy that don't demonize immigrants but make room for immigrants? Are they proposing policies that, he said, when I was a prisoner, you came to see me? So they're proposing policies that treat prisoners with dignity and respect. Look at how Jesus dealt with people and what he recommended. That's where his values lie. And those are the values that we should share. So I think that would help on that issue. Another question is, what does God say about abortion?
Is that going to be just on the thou shalt not kill one?
Well, I mean, there are a number of ways to look at this, right?
Yes,
because even the Bible says thou shalt not kill,
right?
But there is justified killing in the Bible.
Yeah.
So it's not a black or white, right?
Right.
Even in man's law, murder is against the law.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's justified, it's not murder.
Mm-hmm.
The person's still dead, right? So it's not black and white. So when you say, what does God say about abortion? It isn't black and white, because God valued the fetus for sure. Jeremiah 1:5, he told Jeremiah, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb.
Right.
So every soul that exists has existed in the mind's eye of God, right? So you go, okay, so that's a life. Well, it's not black or white, because even in the natural, sometimes the body, for natural reasons, abort a fetus.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, that aborted fetus existed in the mind of God, but the body rejected it. And then you get over into the ethical concerns that we raised earlier on the issue: rape, incest, life or death of the mother. So when you say, what does God say? There is no one passage that says thou shalt not commit abortion. There are passages that govern capital punishment. There are passages that governs murder. There are passages that speak about the sanctity of life. So we have to read the totality of those passages and see what the guiding principles are. So if we're looking as Christians for a black and white answer, Scripture does not provide one. And for someone to say, thou shalt not kill, again, the simplicity of that does not meet the test of every circumstance or situation. So I hope that helps with that. I don't know if either of you want to weigh in on the biblical perspective on that beyond what I've said.
I think you covered it well. I mean, due to the fact that there are things that we all going to have to stand before God on when it comes down to decisions and acts or whatever we do. But I think we always should acknowledge the Lord in all our ways and have him assist us in directing our path. That doesn't mean all of our situations are going to be ideally the same, but we do need to talk to God before we talk to anyone else. I think that's important. Even, talk to counsel, talk to people who can lead you in a way that you know that these are the kind of people that talk with God, visit with God, pray with God, pray to God. But you need to make sure you cover yourself in that way. Now, we all got the answer for every decision.
All right. Thank you for that. A few more before we segue. How can we persuade people of color that the only solution to overcome local injustice and poverty is to be a part of people power? I've been leading, so let me yield and allow either of you who want to weigh in first on this issue.
Well, people power to me is voting, making sure that your voice is heard, that you're included in the process. Don't be excluded and be on the sidelines, being a spectator and a commentator. Be a participator. Get in and vote. Make a difference.
Okay, we can share. If you
Got the question?
The question is, how can we persuade people of color that the only solution to overcoming local injustice and poverty is to be part of people power?
I think that's what we're trying to talk about tonight. We're talking about community, different organizations within the community, trying to work together towards a common goal. And what we need is opportunities for more people to become involved and engaged. And I would think that groups that are putting on activities some way or another, I guess through social media or word of mouth, I don't know exactly how, but we have to find a way to reach out and find places within our community that we can come together and have common activities. And I believe that our Souls to the Polls is going to be one of those opportunities. And many things that we do at Black History Society, because we have events like Emancipation Day, which is May 20th, when slavery ended in Florida. We have Juneteenth, which is the official national ending of slavery in the United States, which actually is not accurate because it did not end until the 13th Amendment. But that's just a footnote, because there were places in the North that still had slavery, and the end of Juneteenth just pertained to the South. So that does make a difference. However, we talk about educating people about those different dates, and we have fun doing it. There are great activities, there are vendors, and you get some cultural exposure. There are activities around the community that are good activities that more people need to participate in. When you hear about something happening, get out there and join. Form your own groups, your groups within in your neighborhoods. Have a block party. Get to know your neighbors. Have an opportunity to have discussions. Maybe invite people to your house for some beverages and hors d'oeuvres or the like, and conversation, and maybe it spreads and becomes something that people do.
That people power discussion. We both what have been discussed by our guests are on point. But one of the things we've learned about power, it's consolidating a lot of money. People who have a lot of money have a lot of power, especially in our capitalist society. But power is also consolidated in large numbers of people who are organized and who turn out to express their voice. So beyond the ballot, which is this most immediate opportunity to exercise power, to allow your voice to be heard, to vote, which is the purpose of this platform, to encourage that, that is connecting with organizations like LIFE, like the Ministerial Alliance, like community advocate groups that are fighting for change in local laws and policies, organize and turn out when those things are being discussed, and have representation to speak on those issues so that your local elected officials will see your power. When you are absent, they don't think you care. When you are absent, they don't have to answer for your concerns, and they more readily pass laws that are not in your interest. So organizing and working with groups that seek to organize and turn out, like the Clergy Alliance, like a group like Life. So we build power that way. And again, that's not being political, that's being prophetic. We got to change our paradigm for this level of engagement, okay? This is going to be the final question, and thank you all for weighing in. But back to the immigration issue, undocumented immigrants don't pay taxes or tithe. We need to take care of home. American people are suffering. And so that is a particular narrative. The other narrative that makes more sense is many of these people are here, they've been here for years, and they're working undocumented. People are hiring them because the labor is cheap. If we had a pathway to citizenship and allowed them to become citizens, now they can be employed properly and pay taxes. Well, on goods, right? And services, but not income. So I assume the question was pertaining to income tax. But if we want that income tax, then let's provide a pathway to citizenship. And towards that end, I would say, I was in court a while back support someone on an unrelated issue, and there was an ICE case where an immigrant who had been living in the area for 20 years, had family here, children here, and never got documented, was rounded up by ICE. And to see that unfold in court, and for the judge to issue the order that based on the law, he had no choice. The judge did not want to, but he had no choice but to turn them over to ICE and to have them deported back to a land where they had no family, they hadn't been in 20 years. That was heart-wrenching. His children were in court, they were born here, they were Americans. His spouse was in court, she'd gone through the process. He hadn't completed. There was something wrong, morally wrong, about that. We're more compassionate people than that. This land is big enough to accommodate those who want to come here and to pursue a better life. And we could eliminate that illegal status by providing pathways for those people. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to our guests and give an opportunity for any final words you would like to share before we conclude our session tonight.
I just want to say, if I'll be allowed, just to put an emphasis on the October 26th event at the Clemente Park and how important it is that we show up in numbers and that you get out and vote. And if you get to early voting, go. Get through it as soon as you can. We want it to happen. But if you don't get there before the 26th, come out to the Souls to the Poll event and be a part of what's happening there, because we're taking vans. We're going to have 10 vans on the property there to move people to the polls and to get them in there. And we show a strong front here in this community that we believe in voting and our voice will be heard, and that we're going to put power, numbers and power together to have an impact that we believe that is going to change the landscape of the political things that happen in our community as well as around the nation. But we can't do that if we don't vote and if we don't let our voice be heard. We need you to come out.
We're down to one microphone, so we're going to pass it. No, that's you. Something's going on. Test 1, 2. Get it in quick. It just turned red. Something's going on with Sister Cass there.
Power to the people. If you want to see people power, come out. Let's start doing more community things. I'm really excited about this Souls to the Polls event. There is going to be a lot of things that are going on. Don't let there be more vendors out there and more fun things out there than you. We need you out there. We need your friends, your family. If you can't vote, then you bring somebody who can vote.
Thank you very much. And my add-on to this encouragement for the Souls to the Polls, it is also an opportunity to save the one remaining precinct in our community. For years, there was one at Dr. Kerry Robinson Center. It was closed due to or underutilization. There's one remaining at the Renaissance Reserve on Michigan. And we're going to be encouraging everyone who turns out the souls to the polls to go to the Renaissance Reserve so we can drive those numbers up and so that we can save that precinct in our community. This is an opportunity, something Sister Cass said, to be proactive as opposed to reactive. Mark this day. We have an opportunity to save that polling station in our community, but we got to get numbers there so they see, oh, their numbers went up this year, okay? And also, this is an opportunity to express our power. Now, with that, I want to close by saying we recognize that the voting bloc in the African-American, Hispanic, underserved communities is not a monolith. We understand everybody is not Democrat. Many of people we love and work with are Republican. We don't demonize you. We simply have a difference of opinion in regards to what's best social policy for the people we serve. We want to encourage you to get out and vote as well. At the end of the day, let's not allow politics and differing opinions on political issues to breach our relationships and our love with each other as community and people. At the end of the day, we are all Americans, and I will say this too, this us against them mentality is just destructive, and it is wrong. I did some research, and in the history of the United States, guess what? There have been 27 Democratic presidential administrations and 26 Republican administrations to govern this nation in its history. And the nation has survived both Republican and Democratic administrations. Let's not demonize people because they have differing political ideas. And let's accept the outcome of elections. It is absolutely undemocratic to undermine the electoral process. Please understand that. Please understand that. It destroys and it eats at our democracy. There are paths to be taken to address discrepancies and counts and challenges. And once those paths have been exercised, every administration up to this last one has dealt with those results, even if it hurt them to their core. Let's return to that American tradition of the peaceful transfer of power. Let your voice be heard. Turn out and vote. We hope you found value in this episode of Relevant Conversations with Dr. Glover. You'll be able to watch this online at www.nthermanchurch.org or at Official Mount Hermon on YouTube, Official Mount Hermon on Facebook. Please share it with people you love if you have found value in this, and encourage your circle to get out to vote. Grace, blessings, and thank you for joining us. Hi, family and community. The congregations of the Greater Community Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, in collaboration with the Lee County Black History Society and Faith in Florida, is sponsoring a Souls to the Polls community event on October the 26th from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's right, in an effort to boost voter turnout in our community and in an effort to boost voter turnout to the only remaining precinct in our community, we will be providing free rides to the polls. But not only that, this is a community event where there will be food, there will be entertainment, and there will be activities. So we want to encourage you to meet us at Clemente Park on Saturday, the 26th, from 12 to 6 p.m. for the Souls to the Polls event. Please share this information with your family, your friends, your social circle, and let's have a huge community turnout for this election season. See you there.